they've said that drone strikes are bad before, and
I think also
ignored them.
Here, let me just quickly preempt this with a quick explanation. There are two reasons to vote affirmative. One is changing the way we debate about drones, which means even if you won circumvention, that's still a reason to vote app. The second is the actual material implementation of stopping drone strikes. So your circumvention arguments, we will not say no link. We might say that who cares for the first part of the app.
Okay, so what? So your first card on the roll of the ballot says that...
I dare you to introduce a card that says Obama would circumvent a Jirga ruling, and our Ahmed card is shockingly specific about that.
Okay,
so if you have a card that says he wouldn't listen to Jirgas...
The Tahir evidence says that debating about bureaucratic mechanisms is bad because right now...
Not that it's bad, it's that it misses the point, and that we've already had sufficient numbers of those debates.
In terms of civilians versus militants, why is this intrinsic to talking about bureaucratic mechanisms?
I think the part about how making the trains run on time and the legal machinations, the point is that people in Waziristan...
Well, certainly, that's a problem with... That's like a problem with how bureaucracy is now. I'm wondering why it is intrinsic.
You haven't let me answer the question. It is intrinsic, and I'm about to get to that. The argument is that people in Waziristan do not care which branch of the federal government or which part of authority. They want drones to stop. And so our argument is that when you inevitably introduce this bullshit process counterplan in the 1 and C, that misses the point. It doesn't matter whether or not Congress or the president has the authority to do this. The question is, how do we stop drones? And we think that placing an external statutory restriction on the U.S. is a better method.
What makes you say you need your method is a genuine affirmation of the periphery. What makes it genuine?
Well, one, I think that genuine, you should be very careful not to read too much into that. This is not an authenticity test. Nowhere in the debate will we say you're not genuine and we are. One is because, hello, Pakistani over here, this is his attempt to craft a part of the resolution that speaks to his lived experience and his family's experience. So that's one reason why it's more genuine. Our scholarship is entirely based off of Eastern scholarship.
The two reasons to vote AF, one is you actually stop drone strikes, and two is that we change how we talk about drone strikes.
We think that the way that we are debating about drone strikes as Americans and the debate community specifically is bad, and that this 1AC does something to change that. So any solvency or dishad that you win, that there's still all reason to vote AF.
Do we want to do an email chain or just flash it?
Either one works.
I'd prefer an email chain.
Alright, yeah, let's do that.
If you could keep me on email.
Okay. If that helps you.
I'm not sure if the 1AC was on it. If it's not, we'll add it at the end of the
Yeah, that's
What are everyone's emails?
Mine is ericlanning@gmail.com.
I'm ready.
Oh, he's going to write both of our things.
Okay.
You got it. Everybody.
And do all of you want to be on the email?
Yeah, you probably still have my email address somewhere in your account.
Yeah. Yep.
Actually, if I could get on that as well, please.
Here's the emails.
No, I don't have it.
Well, here.
We don't read the alternative until the 2 and C, and it's a poem.
Okay.
Which is available on my YouTube channel if you'd like to see it.
Hey Taylor, I can't
Did you write it?
Oh,
sorry.
Did you write it?
Taylor
Bryce Coles.
Bryce. Oh, I have to read that.
It was the last thing I did in East Lansing before I drove away.
JDK.debate.
Are you sure it's from?
I haven't been back since.
Oh, I think I've got it.
You just, may find yourself.
Apparently,
East Lansing at some point.
I'm included on this other NDT Round 1. Someone just sent me their Cyber 1AC. It's Steve Tippett. They're apparently debating Wayne State, and Chris Crow is judging. I'm going to respond with something trolly on this. I'm just going to say LOL.
You're on Sarah's email, that's why. She's judging the run, that's why she's on there.
Alright. There'll be 5 off in case.
She'll
You
probably
give us
be
a
able
second.
to. Yeah, I'm apparently logged into Sarah's email. Which will explain why I got that email. want me judging that, babe. How do I log out of her email?
Click on this thingy.
My God, Laney.
I can do anything off the phone. That's why I'm so
I've
good
seen
at...
you live for a summer on your computer playing video games.
That's
You
that's
can't-
different
No,
because it's not
not.
the internet.
You can figure out all the logins and all that crap. Dude, it's the same thing. You just don't want to. You're talking to the wrong person.
That's fair.
You're not
You-
capable. I understand apathy.
I only have one hand.
I have lots of people.
That one doesn't work as well with me.
All of those video games that are conducive for playing with one hand.
You know, I am surprisingly good at League of Legends despite only having one hand. And I play with a trackpad.
So you should just make it so it's...
What is my password?
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know what it is.
I don't know anything about these Fandango contractions. They're-
I shockingly did not get it.
Oh, it's because I opened it. Okay.
On the internet.
We won't get this in the last tournament.
Can anyone who knows anything about technology explain this? When he opens the email first, it deletes it from my email.
Pardon me, I don't know how our accounts are
I do
linked
not know
together
how
like that,
it does
but that's
that, but
what
if he opens and downloads the speech doc, it does not show up in mine, and if he doesn't, then it does.
It's bizarre. It's not the same email. You're sure of that?
happened. Yeah.
You're sure he's not using your email and Sarah's when he's bored with yours.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, I take it as a sign
What's
from
the order?
universe.
it's 5
meant
off,
to be from-
then case.
Is there a particular case page you'd like to put it on?
Pick
No,
one.
you can just pick one. Pick your favorite.
Can we do the Jerga?
Sure.
Okay.
So the fletcher.
I need one more second, sorry.
Just let me know when you're ready. Team restrict statutory restrictions require congressional action. Kirchner 10. The powers restricted to the president. Sexual restrictions violate the Constitution. Fair and compassionate issues requires the involvement of the House of Representatives. Judicial restrictions are posted by the court. Singer 7. Towards issues upon the authority of the executive flesh out the judicial reviews of the error and authority their discussing these political questions. We to avoid judicial restrictions on principles power in cases involving military force. Authority is delegated power from principle to an agent. The president can't restrict their own authority. Hal Hawkins and all apply to be a principle. The activist be able to grant authority rescinded. Congress can authorize the president to decide policy, then later revoke that authority. In this case, Congress indeed the principle of the president to be principles activist was granted has the power to revoke authority vote. Negative ground that can be the ER counterpart on the app. Also avoid flex convention to horror of the war powers to be limits. They justify doing anything with the military. The check out statutory judicial is the key to plus a live otherwise unmanageable topic and expertise and independent order. Changing the way we debate about drones is not written. The resolution is true active to a T explodes because it means the app be offense based on anything they do in the debate. Next off is T targeted killing. Targeted killing is an extra judicial military straight for military objectives and they are distinct from assassination that they are not politically motivated. Dreyfus 22. The targeted killing is the same type of action or kind of distinct rules that targeted killing is going to be a preferred term for the military operations. The context of U.S. targeted killing involves a missile strike by drone against terror. Targeted killings are extrajudicial. Targeted killing statutes are distinct operations. The context office play assassination for promoting the use of subterfuge. While targeted killing the military strikes distinction is important. Targeted killing is based differently concerns to assassination is political. Targeted killing and execution are distinct. Targeted killing is a military strike. The state does not intend to right or wrong with a further a military objective. Vote negative limits of ground. They justify an unpredictable flood of mass training and assassination of any political, military, or religious leader in the world without the relationship or advantage. The explicit limit to military strikes is the only guarantee of coordinated ground and precision. Maintaining a strict right line between target killing and its cultural elements is key to legal clarity. Precision is key to political research and division of ground. Next off is counterplan. The executive branch of the United States Republic affirmed the opposition to the grand jury to conduct legal assassination facts and implement this to result by the mechanism including but not limited to independent commissions to review and ensure compliance with the order and transparency measures against journalists access to White House decision making. The counterplan since the most powerful signal Brzezinski told us the president's directly movement decisive action. She sees the ultimate fighter of the goals. The world sees that them the opposite voice of America. Nobody is the government To extend the decisively active congressional secretary still quietly compete the White House already to support the president next office politics. Obama's successfully holding on pressure for wider sanctions for taking account of the approach failure into Russian retaliation. AP 322. Putin jokes of Obama's decision to freeze assets. Putin quickly retaliate more serious repercussions. Lose the stand-up heats. For now, Putin says there's no need to reverse further Russian retaliation. Putin claims that no further incursions used. Way the possibility of impact from the Russian energy makes it that could backfire. Moscow on turn seas. American assets are cut off. Exports to gas to Europe. You're Russian influencing the other they've done. Obama will stay public sanctions already imposed, but taking step by step approach to use giving Russia a chance to take the diplomatic offense to solve the crisis. Europe urged Obama to rally sanctions for 54 U.S. government officials and foreign policy experts to Obama urged to disband the sanctions. Russian financial institutions. The plan destroys Obama. Political strength sustains the support of his base. Loomis 7 declining authority encourages the to the president's limited power perception. Manages the Oval Office on the defensive lead. Disaster. Losers lose the president's ability to time political capital. Diminished capacity political allies. Perceived declining benefit for publicly trying himself to the president's capacity. Forces perception to that loses accelerates defection. Political capital is critical for Obama to hold off Hawks and promote conflict and de-escalation. Reichman 36. The world is at the dangerous strength of all the choices of war seems to nothing. People taking for granted what's more simple. The actions used to aggravate the conflict anymore. Or run the risk of getting out of control. Proving out with heightening the risk of a big war that would require certain moves like the Obama administration. Bomb text and hosting station, which is bad enough. The question is whether he expects to sustain the pressure to get tougher pressure from the usual hacks and something to come from U.S. war, U.S. intervention. Obama should pull back and fix the confrontations abroad. Sanctions cause retaliation. The greatest global economic collapse of the 21st century. Mercer 316. The United States is already looking at the broad economic sanctions which to punish Russia. Russia, as many economic ones, those to retaliate the economic pain for this tit for tat will be inflicted. The EU because they should all face it. Russia states should be tried, but still find a role in the economy to a financial crash. Drastic sanctions against Russia. Russia's subsequent retaliation to the global economy straddling the chaos, global sanctions, and the Russian retaliation directly for that. So the game of sanctions, the global zero-sum game by 2008 crash over also is looking a walk in the park and collapse causes global nuclear warfare. We're leading the 11 conflict of the use of the nuclear weapons are determined by the collapse of the global economic financial system. The prospect of Great Depression tensions become unbearable. Theory how the absolutes converge with unbridled nationalism. Next is the circumvention. It said wartime causes circumvention. The intractable battle cries the national diversion that impairs military wartime decisions. Global aid restriction. With both the president and the Congress restrictions, the president would argue the requirement does not make sense in the concept of war on terror. Wartime reality faces the president who will overwhelm Congress and the board's presidents. Ignore legislative enactments that stricter six their authority control because they have to be the branches of the agency and speak over the constitution of the definition energy diverge, which engages the rule of law, chaos, and stalemate rate, result competing constitutional positions while authorized in the 8th conference between the branches is so essential in wartime social science research suggests self-serving bias, hard to see science petition laws with disputes to drag on the impact is great power. War Haas 13. History is filled with examples with political disagreement that helps to difficult for the use to act, much less lead abroad. Division is impossible to conclude treaties, appropriate funds for foreign assistance, lack of consensus. Also, you know, trying to invest in the foundation of American power makes the U.S. less predictable subject that can unnerve allies and embolden adversaries. All this then disintegration into global disorder. Now go to case. Calculation is good and inevitable and ethical. Deliver more governmental decisions are applicable different personal decisions they for people and they aggregate governmental decision making seen to global-based individuals. Also prerequisite compassion needed. Caution and analysis can seem hard for such an approach is necessary. Saving the most lives requires us to step back, failing to use tools amounts to abandoning our duties to one another. Must access compassion by recognizing numbers represent living human beings. Calamities resolve with the ability to use reason and default to consequences in utilitarianism. Anything else is teleological. Green tends exceeding unlikely that there is any coherent theory that can accommodate moral intuition. Deontology so not taking humanity seriously. This deontology in terms of is not distinctly deontologically consequential to respect other persons or things between them as mere objects by contemplating person's well-being. A consequential act in order to get restitution to give equal with everyone's interest. If you ask what's wrong to push someone to say 5 answers will be teleological. Civilian deaths are overestimated, declining for most recent happened. Cohen 13 data. Lectures found in Pakistan news report which is the Pakistani intelligence invested into the negative consequences. U.S. turns a clear that is the first part. U.S. civilians are dying from just not just the merit to the proportion of the civilians dying is falling. There's been no civilian deaths this year. Only 5 last year victims per year and a single digit civilian deaths from drones are dramatically overstated. The alternative drones are far more humane and drones are key to Pakistani stability. Blowback and because of global government policies. Bureau 12 drones are the best means to achieve killing terrorists and no terrorists with Pakistani ability to spell the alternative.
Sketchy, scratch that card. Just read the next one.
Scratch that card. Limited target killings in Pakistan cause a shift towards ground assaults. Turns the case in classes of Pakistani government. Whites 11 in part ardent in favor of using UAV strikes in Pakistan's alternative options are far worse than armies opposed to plans to occupy northern with serious to move with meat fierce resistance affecting the active help and result in joining Pakistan Taliban in fight with the government sending U.S. troops on the Great Race to require bloodshed outrage in Pakistan and other countries. On one occasion, the U.S. Special Forces connected the ground, solved hard layers. Pakistan reacted fiercely further. Large-scale U.S. operations could rally popular support behind the Taliban. Al-Qaeda bank receptive collapse of the government was replacement of the regime in nuclear. Pakistan has less proximity to Washington because alternatives containing drone strikes appears the best of the options available. Their Islamophobia claims are too sweeping. Our authors are epistemological Islam in the West is inevitably taken. Job P9 report defines Islamophobia. Certain close views of Islam is the definition of Islamophobia is little likely not back into it being sweeping and undifferentiated such as things seems to be noticed, but with an incriminated opposite seems inconsistent. Taken for granted a monolithic criticism of the West, which the West is asked to consider to make this a double standard here. The West is asked to so on the other side to qualify as phobia, and Islamophobia is zero causal explanation of powers and method can't solve because it's so nebulous, blind to love, and Islamophobia is widely used. There's no widely accepted definition in terms of results. It's extremely difficult to compare levels of Islamophobia without the concept applies causes comparative, in which it is impossible to identify causes and consequences of Islamophobia with any precision. No empirical support for Islamophobia driving violence, holiday 99 to identify causes with Muslims, non-Muslims not sufficient to explain such tension, good intention, consider sociological analysis and technical league. Also, the Muslims a long history of conflict in Islam in the West that presupposes something which there's little evidence for. Means an enemy one has to apply this prejudice to the same logic which he applied to other ideologies. Now, application of Jurga to competitive debate, and specifically the claim that the one he was performing Jurga requires the rejection of the applicants. Select Jurga members who have personal interest in the decision of the suit, i.e. the ballot camp. 12, there are concerns about which members the society was selected for. A Jurga check to decide to begin process representation selection was critical, ensuring credible, fair resolutions. The response to the most important criteria is the knowledgeable person they said. So leader of the Jurga showed no personal interest in the decision to they inappropriately romanticize the Jurga. They can't sell social change into it's too prone to perception of corruption. Camp 12 and manipulatory romanticize the Jurga person has to protect the Jurga that and challenges modernization, globalization, the degradation, corruption of the Jurga. There's been diminishing strength as a result after the establishment of the government system. This role the Jurga has passed on selective behavior. The Jurga non-profit to assume that it holds all the answers, and it's too easily corrupted. Camp 12, there are concerns with Jurgas when the dispute is solved and the influential person is not with their fault decision. There's nothing we can do about Jurga decisions rely on powerful members of the community impact of the Supreme Court Pakistan like the necessary influence to enforce decision. Jurgas have become a body that can be purchased for the right price that's our form of broader judicial system is required, and the executive will interpret enforcement of any restriction in targeted killing as constitutionally void. McCall, the 11th congressional action of any kind is very serious for the executive branches in the position that any infringement of the president's targeted killing authority is unconstitutional, and broad interpretation of the plan's international self-defense law standards are never ensures zero meaningful constraint in international controversy and global norm for preventative active defense and anticipatory drone strikes aimed at denying the proper international legal right after killing self-defense. The UN Charter says nothing shall appear the inherent right of individual self-defense. The armed panic the U.S. has always protected in international law that shall allow to the content diversity of new throughout this includes self-defense right to something on state actors from the U.S. previously accepted some version of the active defense view of anticipatory self-defense. The state use background of terrorist groups aggression and evidence of recruiting by appears retaliation often quite active defense, but state uses the terrorist acts to justify plans to strike the right of self-defense with support direct attack and target killing on terrorist leaders from the actions for exceeding threat. Market attack.
We will take a little bit of prep first. Get it going. Have 9:25 left. Okay, my first question, on topicality, did you read a definition of its?
No.
Okay, so you have a bunch of cards that say that in the United States legal system, statutory restrictions are Congress and judicial restrictions the president can't. Do you have a single card that, or any resolutional support for it has to be a U.S. statutory restriction?
No, it's not our argument. Our argument is you are not a statutory restriction, period. You are not a statutory
Jurgas are.
restriction.
Did you read a card that said Jurgas are not statutory?
We read evidence about what a statutory restriction is.
In the U.S. In the U.S. You'll agree, you read cards about what statutory restrictions mean in the U.S. legal.
The definition means it's passed by, like, the legislative body.
Yes.
Like Congress.
Jurgas are a legislative body.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? We read evidence in the 1AC. Do you have a card on that? That's great that your opinion of that is true, given that we read pieces of qualified Ahmed evidence.
I don't think your 1AC cards actually say that.
They do, so continue.
I think this will play out in the block.
I'm very happy to see them read this. Do you have a card that says Jurgas aren't statutory restrictions or any reason why it has to be its?
I mean, I've got a card. You want me to insert it into the debate right now? Like, I can read it in cross-ex if you would like.
I wish you had read it in the 1 and because so far you haven't made an argument. The counterplan, what is the net benefit?
The politics DA.
Why? The last line of the card you read is the best winners win card I've ever seen. It says, even in the face of congressional opposition, when Obama does something bold, he wins capital.
A, that's not what the card says. B, it's a
read the last line out loud to the judges.
It's a losers lose link. There's no wins here. No wins.
It says, in the face, this is a quote from your card, by the way, so you can correct me. In the face of congressional opposition, when the president does something bold, he gets what he wants.
Wait, no, that's not a line from the card. What the hell? Dude, like, that's not in the card.
Read a line from the card that establishes your losers loot argument you just made up.
The losers lose argument is in the,
on a different piece of paper.
Yeah,
That's great. The circumvention dissent. Do you have you read circumvention cards that are again about U.S. statutory and U.S. congressional or court restrictions? Do you have a card that Obama would circumvent an external restriction on himself?
The evidence says he will restrict, or he will it circumvents
Your spin
all
is
restrictions.
all been so great, but your
Also,
cards are
you're
about
in the
you
card
as
that says
statutory
the Durga
restrictions.
is not enforceable. It's a paper tiger, and no one listens to it. I
Do
think
you-
that's pretty specific.
Do you have a card that says that Obama would ignore another country's statutory restriction?
Question: Do
Yes
you
or-
have
yes.
you have a card that says Obama will listen to
Yes.
the Durga when
In
we
the
restrict
1AC
it? I
we-
don't think you have a solvency advocate that is that specific.
Can we
I
just
think it's
clarify,
kind of
just
silly that
for
you're
the record, you
putting-
do not have card 1 that is about external judicial or
Again,
statutory restrictions.
That's not true. I have a
Which
card
card?
about
Which
the Durga.
piece of evidence?
The
And read
second
a line
card-
from it.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Hold on. It's one of the camp cards. It says there are concerns with Durgas when the dispute is solved. That the influential person does not listen or follow the decision. There is nothing we can do about it. And then there's a card that says Obama. does
LOL,
not
that's
listen.
fine. Your
on, dude.
case arguments about how we said the debate was a Jirga, where did we say the debate was a Jirga?
Well, at the bottom you said that it's part of like how.
Like your role of the ballot.
We did
Yeah,
not say
yeah,
debate was a Jirga. We
the
said
very
we
bottom
invited you to
said-
talk to us.
Yeah, you invited the judges to like participate in the Jirga. If that's not what that
Did I
means,
say
that's
Jirga?
fine.
It seems like you answered a version of the AF we didn't read. We never said the debate was a Jirga. If we,
Okay,
I'll
that's
take a
fine.
little bit of prep for this.
I'm glad
If we
we
agree the
had
debate
a
is not a
Jirga.
Jirga, do these arguments all go away?
No, the
Well, if you, it only applies if you use it to impact turn T or make
Yeah.
me
Well,
a role of the
we are
ballot.
clearly going to do that because you haven't
Okay,
defined
so then it
its,
does
and
apply.
that's pretty racist
So
to just
then,
say
yeah,
all
it
statutory
applies.
restrictions are ours, but that's fine.
Oh wait, I just need one card.
Can you kick the counterclaim?
Yep.
Is there any way we can stick you to it?
No.
Nope.
Fuck, bro.
831.
Let me send it out. Step right. 30 more seconds.
So you're at 8.
Let me know when y'all have it.
Can you jump it?
Okay, the order is going to be T restrictions, T targeted killing, then it will be the case page starting with the periphery contention, so contention 1. Then it will be the case page with their neg arguments, or with their arguments. Then it will be the counterplan, the circumvention disad, and then the politics disad.
Dissent. Yeah.
Sorry, can you say this kind of
Counterplan, circumvention, politics.
You have a time for your computer, right?
Okay, is everyone ready? Cool. 1. We increase restrictions on targeted killing. 2. Counter interpretation. Restriction on presidential authority do not have to be American restrictions. There's no it's in the resolution we allowed. Jurga to restrict the authority. 3. Restrict includes the power to prohibit words and phrases. 4. Restrict necessarily includes power to prohibit within certain limits. Restricting being defined as restrained within bounds to confine. 4. You can interpret the plan as USFG taking the advice of Jurga and restricting authority. And Latif and Masarad evidence indicates that Jurgas are there. Methods of statutory restrictions. That means we still need statutory, just not the U.S. Statutory 5. No, prefer our interpretation. Our affirmative is an impact and negative. Ask you to recenter the question of targeted killing back to Washington. We say parent towards with your son, based upon no ground laws, so getting least to their politics and other arguments. 6. The reasonability good is good enough. 7. Their interpretation to best focus on Washington, that is the violent and causes more killing. That's the one they see Gregory evidence. 8. We impact turn the model education is flawed. Education relies on experts and ignores personal experiences and people living under drones and the people dying under drones and the people trying to make policy decisions under drones. They don't live under drones. They can't tell the people in the bear that they only care about limiting ground because the people in the bear don't have grounds that are safe for them. They wish to limit targeted killing. So maybe their grandmother would still be alive. That's impacted by everyone they see. To hear evidence, nice solvency advocate check. Let me question. We have a very specific solvency advocate for the plan, which is the most prominent reason scholarship or targeted killing from the Working Institute, and it's predictable. Don't blame us because we haven't done topic research, and their description of rules to govern the topic creates a distinction between role-following patriotic good Muslims and troll-causing bad Muslims. This reinforces settler colonialism, Islamophobia, would affirm it and negate the dichotomy mirror 2009. Which distinguish between good Muslim, bad Muslim, responsible terrorism, good and bad ideas, rework notions of enemies and defenders, freedom from Cold War era as part of national security, goods and such as affirmed by Muslim American individuals testifying loyalty to the nation and asserting the belief in democratic ideals, imperative patriotism, deeming the dissent against the state policies and patriotic suppress for radical movements, asserting enemies of American value traces, patriotism, to say settler colonialism, need to create a geographical dominated process, some sort of divine mandate that legitimizes presence on an additional land.
And girl, if you want to go for the extra thing, read some framework cards.
Right,
if
if you want to go for the extra T argument,
it is
you
a
should
reason
read
to
some
vote
framework cards. Our interpretation of it solves all of their offense on the extra T argument. Now go to the targeted killing argument. First, we restrict targeted killing. Second, counter interpretation. You can take the definition of targeted killing to be our definition for legalized assassinations. And second, counter interpretation. The word legalized distinguishes assassinations from just general assassinations. It's best to call it targeted killing. Legalized assassination. Jones 2012. Targeted killing has a number of definitions, all of which consists of laws of war do not define targeted killing per se. Protective way to think about targeted killing is legalized assassination, where it creates many extrajudicial killings. One of the most serious violations of international human rights. Targeted killing can be lawful, it can be unlawful, depends on this is why commentators cite U.S. genocide assassination, because so many of them take place outside the wars and such. Reaction towards what assassination symptomatic of juridical fudging. Assassination happens outside the wars and becomes utterly orwellian wars, peace, Soviet freedom, and assassination target killing. Mark that card there. Also, they have no impact to this interpretation of topicality argument. They have not defined what kind of ground they're losing. We will meet any interpretation of targeted killing they have. Also, this solves all of their.
If they win targeted killing is something, we'll defend it.
Right, if they've been targeted killing means a certain thing, we'll say that is what our plan does. No ground laws. Also, you can classify all the impact turns to impact turn and classify reasonability and go to the periphery contention. It is very awkward that they indicate that they argue utilitarianism is good when they don't even consider utilities, or when they don't even consider everyone under their interpretation of utilitarianism. Silence voices and Nabila Zubair, this Romero evidence indicates that this is what causes Islamophobia to occur and keep on going. When white Americans forget about the genocide that is happening in Waziristan, this allows the genocide to continue. That's impacted by Gregory evidence. You should punish them because they're just as bad as the policymakers that didn't show up and said they're worse because they're in the room debating about Ukraine sanctions rather than listening to the people that are here giving them. They should vote affirmative just to make them internalize the same frustration of Nabila Zubair felt when no one came to listen to their argument. They'll go to Jirga page, go to their neg argument. They say calculation is good. We are impact turning calculation utilitarianism for whoever. Affirmative indicates that status no models of utilitarianism calculations only take the center into account, don't include the periphery. Our affirmative impact turns this indicates indicate that including the periphery and these type of deliberations is key to be able to solve. Now they say civilian deaths happening. They say death flow. Now this is not an argument against the affirmative. Our affirmative is only that we need to recognize tribal customs, and we need to reaffirm the tribal customs that are present, even if the deaths are low. Now that's not a reason that deaths should be continuing. They say Pakistani shift evidence. This evidence for 2011 doesn't take into account the current peace talks that are happening in the Pakistani government with the Taliban. That means that there won't be an unconditional shift argument. They say Islamophobia there. This is very awkward, and they still don't read a single piece of evidence from an author that is Islamic. That's our argument. When they crowd out these foreign, when they crowd out Eastern knowledge, this is what causes Islamophobia to happen. Also, they say
that card is a specific indictment of one report that we didn't read.
Their card is a specific indictment of one report, not a defense of all their authors. Also, they say we don't solve Islamophobia. That, of course, we don't solve the whole thing. It's a process. It's not a current solvency every single time the plan is key to go on. They say the appropriation of Jirga is bad. We're not doing that. We're only affirming a specific ruling. They say we romanticize the Jirga. They miss the uniqueness question that Jirgas are going to happen whether or not you do the plan. That means that their argument has no offense to our affirmative. We defend a specific form of Jirga. You should read our frontier post evidence indicates that restrains drone strike. They should read evidence that's specific to that. They say that Obama will go against any constitutional void. This evidence is in the context of congressional restrictions, not a foreign restrictions. Our evidence indicates that Obama will follow Jirga decision. Now go to the counterplan. One picks our voting issues, steals all critical ground from the affirmative. After evidence indicates that focusing on legal machinations with the plan sets us in a mode of calculation of these civilians that day from drone strike merely as collateral damage. This is my to justify the bad U.S. policies like drone strikes in the first place. If you think that these two affirmative true, you should put affirmative two. Burn do the counterplan recentering is ever net benefit one. They see prioritize the periphery. Counterplan diverts attention to the center. Our evidence indicates that genocide like with 0%. This is what causes forgetting genocide like with 0% less Islamophobia to go grade 13. And critics of drone strike in Pakistan and else who demand to know about legal bases that were public engagement while with 0% Washington Obama administration theatrical performance of secrecy over Fatah. Functions their audience and translate towards the American body politic away from Pakistani bodies on the ground. When you ask people who live in their drones what they want, they do not want transparency, accountability. They say they want the killing to stop. They want to stop dying. They want to stop going to funerals, sir. Irritation, do blood, and that benefits Islamophobia. That was explained above for conditional ethics, our voting issues. Crazy moving target. Also strikes you for the affirmative.
They say drones good, and we should stop drones.
They say drones
Awkward.
good,
Which one
and
is true?
they say they should stop drones. This is a contradictory policy. Double turns their arguments. Also, they should pick one, or otherwise it's a reason permutation. Do both solves also 5 declaratory policy solves executive will circumvent itself. Associated Press 14. Senior administration official denied that any informal agreement had been initiating the issue of whether to negotiate with the Pakistan Taliban is entirely internal matter for Pakistan administration continuing aggressively identifying disrupt terrorist threats and Afghan war to Iran outside of war activists still in line with establishing terrorism. Also, 6 counterplan links and that benefits cost political capital. Cooper 2002 executive order makes the White House the lightning rod for criticism. It's one thing for critics to fight another one. The politics when the White House decides to interpose intelligence policy. Also, their solvency evidence is the best. Whenever argument for us indicates that even in the face when the president does something bold against Congress, he wins. That means there's no net benefit permutation. So now go to the circumvention argument. Non-unique drones are low now. That's their evidence indicates that the circumvention should have already happened. Second turn, the stronger statutory checks on presidential war powers are increased America's result. Weissman 13 stronger relationship checks on presidential wars would improve deterrent strategies by making them more credible. Most credible use our president carry formal approval. Mark that card. There are also 3 no circumvention. Associated Press 2 6 Obama administration sharply controls drone strikes in Pakistan after request from the government. There has restrained as to pursue peace talks. That's why they ask for is that we need to tell them no. One use official said will carry a strike against senior al-Qaeda targets. Also go to the politics. They said no, non-unique there. They're just have their non-unique status with reduction. Drone strike should have triggered the link. Associated Press 2 6 that was the card that I just read on circumvention. 2 policymakers can enact multiple policies. This has not an intrinsic opportunity cost to the plan. 3rd is the recentering. They said again they're reshifting discussion back to the American body politic. Well, they told Nabil and Zubair we're not gonna just because we're too busy debating Ukraine. Therefore, non-unique. Obama has no political capital. This Congress is already focusing on other issues instead of Ukraine. AP 327. We're congressional unity in sharp contrast to the recent partisan division with the Ukraine package, which has been caught up in disputes over new IRS regulation group thing claiming it had tax exemption status in international monetary fund from 5 political capital doesn't exist anymore. It assumes a different era with compromise possible earmarks to buy wood. The Economist 130 American political system descending into all out partisan war for Democrats want the general and that's why pundits calling Obama to propose legislation and beat people's heads in the legislative possibilities that don't exist anymore. Neither do earmarks. There were once currency or deal-making parties are ideologically sorted. There's nothing Obama can do to convince Republicans to vote for him. There isn't any reason to believe that an armed citizen would have general. Once Obama decided to throw his entire weight behind the gun control legislation, the last 6 minutes to win. That was their solvency evidence.
Also, you think this over the way. You think this over one's the link there. Either is there evidence is true? Is there evidence to indicate that this passage would happen no matter what? That means that would happen.
Issues are compartmentalized, Mr. Wilbur.
Yeah, issues are compartmentalized.
Wait, or prep. Okay. Alright, so 10 seconds.
Yeah, no, it was.
Alright, just to be clear, you say perm do the counterplan on the dishead and the instant circumvention arguments. Do you fiat that the executive complies with...
Wait, excuse me?
I'm asking, do you fiat the executive complies with the Jurger ruling?
No.
Alright, so it's the U.S. Congress and...
We have cards that indicate that Obama will comply based on the restriction that is provided by the plan text.
Okay.
That's why.
So you don't
The part of the plan that we think if fiat is durable is that the federal government affirms the consensus of the Grand Jurga.
Exactly.
Okay, that doesn't include Obama.
He's part of the federal government.
Wait, so you do say
Our
Obama
argument
will
is not
affirm
that the plan
consensus?
mandates that Obama
It's
stop
a
restriction.
restriction on Obama's authority. That is what the plan does ever. Emmett Evans is pretty good on this. Not only that, ever the
Alright,
last
so
piece of
after
evidence
the
I
plan,
read-
can Obama ignore the F? Or do you think that that is not a relevant question?
We don't think that that's a relevant question. 2, probably not, because we are the only ones that have read evidence that says that he listens to Pakistani restrictions. I'm waiting for that 2NC card. Really hope you actually have one and weren't bluffing.
Okay. Anyway,
think you
that's
were.
enough landing.
Okay.
So,
Oh, thanks.
you read the Samara piece of evidence
Yes.
that says there's a distinction, or like we're making a distinction between good and bad
You did.
Muslims.
Yeah.
You already did it.
So, alright, so is any argument to say, you know, you should be topical in any way?
We
does
think
that
we are
make the
reasonably
distinction?
topical. Our argument is that if
Yeah.
you think the affirmative is any way reasonably topical,
Hold
there
on.
is
Given
no
the
reason for you
context
to
of
read it.
debate
But-
that's going on right now, this is
Right now.
important.
So
Some
there should
people
not be
do not
any
talk about the
limit on
resolution at
topic.
the all. We wanted to talk about our identities on the neg and on
Exactly.
the af, and so he wrote this af to
If
try to
the
be
only
topical.
part of the resolution you think that
Sure,
we're not
but-
meeting is the statutory part, which our
The
by the
its
way, there's
conversation
no
has been
kids.
really
Okay,
awkward
but-
back and forth this whole debate. You don't have a definition of its. You as white Americans
Okay,
think
that's not
statutory
my
has
question.
to be
My
us.
question is, should there be any limit on the topic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So then,
We're
what,
a discussion
what,
of the
where is
resolution.
where is the line between what
Word-
is the limit that we can say?
This is so easy
how
to answer.
Exactly.
Words in the resolution. You have
Yeah.
imagined
okay, so
that
this
its
is
is in the
not an
resolution.
impact turn to T.
Yes, it is.
The
Because
fact
you
that
have
you read
defined.
But
even
saying
though
you
there-
should be topical does not draw a distinction between good and bad Muslims.
The
Correct.
fact that you say you should be topical when we are clearly topical is
Okay,
that
this
distinction.
begs the
It's
question of
is the
T.
specter of this.
Thank
You
you.
have
Exactly.
said that
right.
statutory restrictions must
No,
be the
alright,
U.S.
yeah,
There's
this
no
begs
it's in
the
the
question.
resolution. That's what's racist about your argument.
All right, so let's talk about the utilitarianism arguments.
Sure.
So, you say that it seems like the two of you said yes, we agree we should evaluate consequences. Utilitarianism is good. The problem is that it does not include.
We say we
people
should
on the
evaluate
periphery.
consequences of the periphery. Right. The status quo deliberation does not include things that happen to the
Right.
periphery. That is why the 1AC is so important, because
But
it
if we-
includes those
Sure,
voices
sure.
in our
We
deliberation.
also made
Hold
ethics
on.
arguments many places in the 1AC
Right.
and in the 2AC
Yes,
that are obviously directly clash with this. Like, we did not agree that consequentialism is true.
Okay, sure.
All of our Islamophobia
But-
arguments are recentering arguments.
Sure,
Those
sure.
are
But
reasons
your
to vote for us.
arguments about why we should take into account other people, if utilitarianism does take into account the periphery, it's still
we
a
think
correct
your
philosophy.
interpretation of utilitarian does not do that.
Even if it did, we have separate ethical concerns
Exactly.
that we have
Separate.
raised.
Okay, how do you determine whether something is ethical?
The entire 1AC was a
Whether or not
discussion of
race
how
is,
we do
whether or
that.
not includes voices on the periphery, multiple ways.
How much do y'all have?
9:45 right now.
Do you want to give me a mic?
Any put-
609. Does anyone mind if I go to the bathroom while it's getting downloaded?
You want him to stay?
This debate's taking forever.
Well, I can
Go,
stay.
just go, Crunk. It's not just you. Okay.
Will
We
you
had
jump
the
this
tech set
so
up.
that that's ready?
Bruce couldn't get into his seat. We say we're done with prep, and then we're emailing and jump driving and organizing flows, all of which looks like preparation.
It is.
You know.
Just needs
For people that are concerned about tea and this debate and the way we use words.
Is he-
and we get look at our
I think he's
own
on
actions.
stream. He was on Ricardo's stream.
Every time one debate gets delayed, everybody pays the price for it. The whole
I forgot this was being streamed.
Yeah, there's gonna be a record of you being crotchety the whole
Excellent.
I don't think that would be the most embarrassing internet record of this particular debate. It's my confident prediction.
The beauty of it is we only have 3 of these today, so...
They
we
each
have
only
3
take
of
5
these
hours.
today. So, yeah.
Yeah, except for I think if one debate goes long, I think that still shifts. I don't think they use that and it'll go like, oh.
No. Get.
Yeah.
We should be completely ready to go when he walks back in. So, give me the speech. That would be really bad
There's
if
going to
you.
be a record of Blaney's technological deficiencies too. Or is it personally imposed ones? I think.
It's a willful. I don't want to learn
Yeah,
paperless.
I agree with that. I'm that way too.
I've been here for a
Racist.
decade, and I'm gonna finish the way that I started.
I don't do Facebook. I just won't.
I hope not. I hope you're at least a tad
I was a
bit better.
great novice actually.
No, that's imagine.
Yep.
You are ready to win the NDT coming out of the womb. Like, what?
His mother's watching it too.
Unchanged.
Yes, the exact same way.
I was actually undefeated as a novice.
Really?
Yeah, and then they moved us into JV, and that stopped being a thing.
Nice.
Judd, this will make you happy. I finally learned the difference between the right and the left button on the PC.
Oh, nice.
That's been a huge.
That's one of those core ones. It's kind of like the alphabet of the computer.
Well, I'm just a Mac girl, so.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's T, statutory judicial authority, then T, targeted killing, the strike counter plan, circumvention DA, and case.
In the 2AC order?
Case, yeah, just straight down. The 2AC, yeah.
Try it again.
Which team first?
Statutory judicial. Then do you need it again? Okay. Statutory judicial, targeted killing, the restraint counter plan, the circumvention DA, case, and the 2AC order. The F is not statutory or judicial, and they also have dropped the authority violation. They have fiated that Obama takes the action. They say that is not a relevant question. That's a way of saying that. That's a way of saying that they fiat that the executive will comply with the rule. And that isn't fair to the negative. It's not statutory judicial, and they conceded that it's not authority because the president cannot restrict their own authority. And the Jurga is not a statutory body. Loyal Jurga is a grand assembly, and judicial loyal Jurga is not a lawmaking body. And the Jurga can be a dispute mechanism or a court. So they can't be judicial. They can't be judicial restrictions. They can't be be both of them. It also turns the F it is because they try to fit the Jurga into the Western knowledge of a form of statutory or judicial restriction. That is integrated into the world order. That's the opposite of the F. The topical version of the F is just have Congress pass an act saying that they are bound by the Jurga. That solves their office. The interpretation explodes limits. They have things like ICJ restrictions on nukes, the Rome statute for indefinite detention, or any tribunal in any other country making it apply to the F. They unlimit the topic. Barron and Liberty doesn't indicate the president invoke powers and pattern chief to issue that objection to statutory enactment suggestion he will not fully apply the administration that indicate that any statutory authorization can prevent the use of force against the economy and constitutional reason and practical effect to the expansion of compressing constitutional theory of inclusive war powers. I'm not going to read any of the authority cards because they have dropped the authority violation, so that means they can't get rid of it. Our interpretation doesn't overlimit. They can read any F, and the topical version proves that even if limits outweigh the afflux's heat of depth, breadth is inevitable for resource with depth is created critical thinking. The only portable skill from debate, predictability encourages research. The treatise topic proves that small topics are awesome. That all is shallow, superficial debate. Set a precedent before NDT Round to discourage the slew of badass which avoid all the work we've done. We only got 3 days. We can't prepare for another topic entirely. Afflux is enabled. They got 2 months to prepare for new stuff to say before the NDT. There's limited dissent ground that outweighs things like the restraint counterclaims. You have to win a net benefit to it. The neg's already overstretched because of KF proliferation. We have to be able to. We have to have some type of limit on the topic to be able to get rid of it. They say interpretation to external restraints can be fine. That's fine. They're not a statutory restraint. The Jurga is not statutory, and they also are not from the all the limits to set and the limits to set restrictions prohibit. That's fine. They can prohibit. They say that they make their use that she is taking advice. If the issue includes the executive, that can't be topical, which they said it is before. They said they're using T impact terms. Randall take those, and then one year there is a ground loss because they can't through things like circumvention. The Flexer said even if they don't do it and they give us a link in this debate, it was what they justify that's important. We don't want to have to answer they misuse the executive will comply to Djibouti restrictions app and the outrounds of the NDT which is unpredictable. Limits outweigh cyber and freely get. The debaters of means and differences must be the conflict interest and agree with the need for debate and when there's no clash so debate cannot resolve a decision without clear identification of questions vague understanding rule and unfocused deliberation of decisions enhanced by the failure of the correct of politics and immigration debate without focusing. They could agree that safe education without finding points of clarity or solution. The precise question is both more profitable area of discussions open up simply a place and focus on a search for concrete solution. Limits and decision can be clearly defined and it's not to say that it should be completely avoided creative interpretation. The point of the debate is still to be focused on a particular point of the they say reasonability it's bad, it's arbitrary and subjective. That's the question. The standards on the rest of the debate. Our interpretation is more reasonable than theirs because competing interpretations weeds out the arbitrary interpretations they cite. Even if judge intervention is inevitable, we should try to limit it as much as possible and tease a jurisdictional question so it doesn't matter as a legal topic. The key part of legal education is researching definitions of terms and understanding who the equations of SOP and who restricts who, and they bypass that. They bypass that interpretation. They say I think all the rest of the stuff is impact turns to T, so Miranda's gonna take that. Next T. Not going for it. No, we're not going for it. There's no offense for calling it TK's values. We don't have to call it TK. None of this is offense against the other interpretation. They did say they will become compliant with the definition. That definition says it is individualized, which does not include signature strikes. That means that they can't solve any of the death. I answered reasonability and yeah, that's good. Restraint counterpart. Picks, not going to go for it. Argue about a team. They haven't proven any spillover, but talk about bureaucracy and the legal implications. Legal implications are good because that's why we have how the process of the topic determines how the process of the topic determines the topic itself. Because the reason, example, of the WPR, the reason why we have got so many uncountable drone strikes in Pakistan is because there's no effective external constraint on the president of the WPR failed because the Congress didn't make effective mechanisms to avoid circumvention. So this proves that this is better internal link to their stuff. Now, conditionality is good. We should get a conditional world. It's key to activism. They have to defend their position from every perspective in the real world. And also, it's a key to fairness because we have to structural advantages like limited, half ground choice, infinite prep, first and last speeches. Education is key to breadth. Hell's of it. All session has that. One figure out what to utilize. F depth, force the find strong, definitive advantages. Their interpretation pushes the after a jive. One shot things. People can't counterplan out of them. The conditionality ensures advantages are entering key critical thinking, force reducing compartmentalization and critical analysis. Key to policy comparison skills facilitates debate over minutia by encouraging counterplans. That's key to understand policy making, translate ideas into action. Uniquely important on the legal topic. Defense, all arguments are conditional. Reading 50 procedurals. There's no skews because time investments aren't able. No educational scenes already go for undercovered arguments. There's the argument here. The contradictions argument doesn't make sense. We should be able to test the app by saying that drone strikes are good. We also should be able to test the app by saying that there's a better way to get better. That's key to that also reflects real world decision making. The perm do the counterplan illustrates that they do fiat through the executive, or at least it was vague what they're doing before the 2AC. So you have to be able to hold them to it. Now the circumvention they said Obama is going to ignore the app. We read cards on the case, and the Jurgas aren't enforced by even Pakistanis. Don't listen to their interpretations. Obviously, Obama's going to restrict any allocation of authority. Lobo says he'll claim Article 2 powers and say it's within his inherent self-defense authority. That means they're not going to he's never going to get rid of it, and he'll never give up drones' birth. Obama continues to play drones on a main counter-terror strategy. Look back and see Obama made the disconnect. What he said when actually happens in March. Obama says he used to capture, they kill, but drone strikes continue in May. Obama said drones are heavily constrained in 2014. They'll be reduce strikes. The State Department refuted the statement from the design of the exact time in the drone strike. The drone policy continues without transparency or accountability. He has means to circumvent the applying covert loopholes. Loma 13 target killings may follow the cast exceptions, so there were targets monopolies applies to activities that different congressional reporting rules because such operations distinguish from traditional covert rules. This present loophole allowing the president to circumvent and oversight mechanisms without changes in operational decisions. Regulation could be challenged or revoked with the president anytime internal executive process does not involve Congress judiciary oversight may be inefficient to provide a meaningful check to provide a meaningful checking as the executive. The resolve turn is about this isn't the flex that said the resolve turn is about internal checks with Congress because it creates foreign policy coherence. Obviously, having an external body impose checks on the president was not solve the terms, but it would cause a huge fight which undermines our unified executives and bomb fights. The impact is great power works undermines the U.S. ability to lead abroad, causes miscalculation. Now the case debate. Now their util stuff is misappropriation. Their util bad arguments are misappropriations of util. They have to win links to what we did and say that what we did is an example of bad util calculations. Just because util can be used in bad ways doesn't mean that it's good. Yes, deontology also can be used in bad ways. Used by bad ways. Just about we did talk about the F. We read a whole bunch of case cards that they spent about 5 minutes. They spent about 5 minutes answering the question is util for who. You say util is for everyone. It's not a bad application, but we need to be able to win it. There's a framing issue that conceded that util is inevitable. They can't prove a value to their ethics without resulting in some type of utilitarian calculation. Calculations are also good and ethical and inevitable, and it's key to ethics. Calculations key to ethics and healing through. I think our response needs to be reduced positivity because we have access to nothing but the symptom of primary moral responsibility. Treat the symptoms show as being not radically altered with who we can identify being not pretending who we don't think about suffering that is other than it being hollow in the midst of being that we can act responsibly. Our ethics to be oriented toward the vulnerabilities of the subject. Every life is valuable. Committee United States, if you never on one aggressive to 2% says dignity can't outweigh the compensation for killing one because dignity can't be summoned in this way. That's not self-justified ideological strengths. Why would killing one person be a stronger obligation than saying 2% by concerned with the presence dignity of each of the I still say too. Even if dignity cannot be simply sought out, that should be a same in your presence after impossible. Each of the presence they have a good reason to say. Can they cause atrocities? I see two and unlinked concern with moral goodness, the unconfessed legal responsibilities of 3 fatal false. One, it fails to see the purity of one intention, not to ensure the achievement of one intention. Such an entail impotence is hard to feel to see any moral good beyond the clean conscience. It fails to see that in a world of real violence and injustice, moral purity is not some form of powerlessness, some form of complicity and injustice. It fails to see that policies which provide unintended consequences of intentions, the effects of action with the motives that are most significant, often the pursuit of good, the generation moral absolutism undermines political effects and exclusion or excluding different groups as reason to vote negative. They advocate that the group they save, if we win, our impact is more important than the rest of humanity than the rest of humanity. Which is bad. Now they mishandled the shift to sad. They only limited targeted killing, which means they're going to they exclude that means the president. That means they're going to use Pakistani domestic. The Pakistani domestic governments are going to invade the ground force. Also, it's going to use special operations to be able to defend. We'll use cruise missiles, 5 and 30 cruise missiles, travels, pack much more deadly hail. The U.S. found how much of Yemen over 30 people killed the Yemeni regime. Used to allow drones, but real-time surveillance, but perhaps spotted the women and the attack would have been aborted. They show that drones were distributed drones that in the back and always see foreign governments. It's hard to imagine other covert operations would happen after the F comes over to 11. Drones are built well covert capabilities utilized by the U.S. and Pakistan. Introduced covert action by rate following the rate of uprising counterproductive because of the civilians attacks and military. The Jurgen cards already explained all the circumvention stuff. They are viewed as corrupt, and no one's going to be able to follow them. They don't solve anything. Now also it is victims of Islamophobia are too broad and oversweeping. They can't explain all types of violence, and it also excludes. It excludes women, which is bad. Caster 11 young women sentenced to gang rape to restore the game. I don't know when trouble related since I put his 12-year-old brother marked it brother. I think that's fine.
I have one
sorry
question.
about mishandled, actually.
You're sorry about it? Why did you say that? Do you think that's an appropriate way to describe us answering an argument incorrectly to a person?
It probably isn't. I hadn't
Are you going to read a card to answer this? Because I'm definitely going to make an argument about ableist language. I'm offended.
I'm sorry. I wouldn't say
your
again.
apology means nothing to me. So sorry. Just get that out of the way.
Okay, your definition on T argument, it says a loya jirga is not a lawmaking body. A loya jirga is a codified institution in Afghanistan.
About Afghanistan.
Right, it's about Afghanistan. What does it have to do with Pakistani Pashtun culture?
Well, you
just
No. This is so important. You read a card about Afghanistan, which has a constitution that doesn't recognize the jirga. Pakistan has a formal constitutional structure, but in the Fatah, the jirga is the government.
Right.
Why does your card about Afghanistan apply to that?
Yeah, the Pakistan jirga is either a dispute resolution mechanism or a lawmaking.
Read a line from your card that's not about Afghanistan.
Obviously that card doesn't talk about
it's
that.
It's either dispute resolution or lawmaking, but not both. Which evidence indicates that? This evidence, you underline one sentence, it says it's a grand assembly in Afghan tradition.
Yeah, this is not, it's like, not in that card.
Sure. Again, it's even more awkward because it goes on to say, does allow for loya jirga made up of both houses of parliament and elected heads of regional administrations with the power to amend the constitution, impeach the president, and decide matters on national sovereignty. How is that not a lawmaking body?
That's your card, you just read from it.
You highlighted a sentence that says it's not a lawmaking body, and then it goes on to describe how it is.
You read a card about a different country, and it makes our argument.
Well, if it's about a different country, then it wouldn't.
So you want to
apply.
scratch that card, and you
No.
don't have a card about
It
Jirgas?
says you need to have a card saying that Pakistani Jirga is a lawmaking body.
We did read that card. It's our Latif and Mursak
You
card in the
know,
one.
that's
you
fine.
see.
So
Okay.
just for clarification, you say external restrictions are okay?
Yes, you can't fiat. The president complies with it.
Okay, but you can have an external restriction.
You can, yes.
Okay.
Then
So
what
that's-
about all the
that's
limits
restriction.
arguments? You said like the
Yes.
ICJ and blah blah blah. So you're
Yeah,
scratching
how
that.
do all
Well,
those
it's, no, it's that
arguments
Congress
apply?
or the judiciary has to impose the restriction. So the
They
U.S.
have to
Congress
impose
and
the
US
external
U.S.
restriction.
judiciary has to impose it upon the president.
Okay, I'm fine. with
Okay.
that.
Now you say your case arguments. You say that the misappropriate, or what is your interpretation of utilitarianism? I guess. What is your method? How do you incorporate util into your?
Just most good for the most people.
Okay, who are these most people?
Any person.
Does your evidence or does your scholarship take into account people that live in the periphery?
Yes.
Which evidence
The
indicates that?
Kaminsky evidence says that all people are valuable. The ground shift evidence says this is worse for people in the periphery.
That
because
is
it
your
causes
only
worse
argument for the
transitions.
periphery part. It's the ground shift, Pakistani shift argument.
And like all people are valuable. Like a nuclear
Sure.
war.
You make
would
this
affect
argument about
everyone throughout the
about
world.
Islamophobia not being oversweeping. What part of the affirmative says we need to, or we end all Islamophobia? You think racism just because it's existing?
When did we say it
overall-
explains anything except for violence
Yeah.
against Muslims?
Yeah, we think that there's alt causes to that, and it cannot fully explain
What else explains
against
violence against Muslims? I'll take a little
Like
bit of
intra
credit for this.
okay, there's intra-Muslim violence, which doesn't explain.
You don't think that that's based off
Islamophobia.
colonialism and Islamophobia?
I certainly think that a purely Islamophobic explanation is vastly.
And you think your cards that
faces
you read
difference.
said this?
I think so.
Okay, great.
It will be T.
How much was used?
Like 10 seconds.
It will be T. Answering the turns to T, and then the politics. Yeah.
T and then what? T and then politics.
Yeah,
Is there
T
anything in
politics.
between that?
Nope.
Okay.
Actually, let me tell you. Let's take a second.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just right here.
All right, that's fine.
8 seconds.
A flash. How much time do we have left? 8? Or 7:50 now?
All right, send out. Are you all ready?
He's gonna jump it to me. My internet hasn't been working the entire shindig.
If it helps, I'm gonna just say the arguments I'm going to on T because I think that's gonna be.
I was just gonna
messy.
put it at the bottom of where the 2 NCs stopped. Is that cool with everyone?
That works too.
That's fine.
And then just like
Oh,
the
okay.
bisection.
Well,
Yeah.
do you want the argument I'm going to? Because it's the decentering argument, then the education, but like the point number 8, bad education argument, then the good versus bad Muslims argument number 10, and then the extra T argument.
But we're all cool with just putting all of the cases T at the bottom.
I'm good with that. Don't mind the overall flow. Still reference what you're answering.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Almost. I'm so sorry. I'm really old.
So that makes me dead.
older than you think I am.
Or maybe I am.
Nice. Well played, sir.
Okay, I'm good now.
Alright. They say decentering the first topical version of the app solves this. You can still be topical but not decenter the periphery too. There's no right line between what is decentering and not. They still discuss the usage. There's no explanation for why our topical or for why our T interpretation only focus on the use, obviously because drone sticks are still a huge part of the topic. Third, they can, even if they don't use our T version, they can still use the justification to use for a US policy, which still solves their decentering and policy argument. Now they say interpretation 1, this begs the question of A, the case debate, and 2, the ethics arguments we've made, because these disprove why your education is uniquely good. Also, experts should not be rejected. Bronner, 4, praise the abstract that also has, let's say, north the critical disciplinary and intellectual expertise in area, ethics responsible for the host of issues involving knowledge of fields of physics and genetics, electronics, even environmentalism. There is also the case that complex students sometimes require complex fields, generate their own vocabularies. There must be a place for technical, the political science, conscious assurance, the humans with political expressionality, the battle against oppression, requires multiple frontal strategy, and the alternative to expertise is naive. Faith Palin proves this is disastrous. Harris, the process of the Palin administration are far more filling access to households and have a bad word in politics. There's simply no other walk of life in which extraordinary talent, rigorous training, or degree validly polysify our plain elite athletes represent the competition only scientists supposed to for years of life to curing our diseases. Marked diseases now. They say we're the bad curative versus bad Muslim, but the cross-ex proves that this is not applied to T. Saying you should be topical for the purposes of the debate does not say you are a bad Muslim in any way, shape, or form. The fact that this argument would justify no topical affirmatives at all, which they clearly don't agree with, means it doesn't link. We're not saying you are a bad Muslim. We are saying that there should be a topical, the affirmative should be topical to facilitate a better debate. Same thing goes for the extra T. You can see this exposes limits by saying you should justify things based on what we did in the round. Creates a model debate where people that are doing competing things but not debating with each other. Only our model forces class. This argument also saying vote for them because we change education also begs the question of the case debate and the ethics debate, which means if we win your case is not good, then that should take out this argument as an independent reason to vote act. Now go to the politics instead. Obama will use political capital push to graduate escalation using small sanctions. Now, while holding out big sanctions to keep Congress impotent from resorting to escalatory retaliation. Broad sanctions start a tit for tat retaliation game that will collapse the global financial system. That's mercier. We turn that way. It's a faster time frame and cause a global recession overnight as soon as the sanctions are passed. So once the evidence out B is magnitude, they have considered the impact to collapse the global economy and cause global warfare across the planet. That includes the periphery, not just that for the U.S. It includes things like Russia, which means that is turns the case cause extinction, which hurts all life on the planet. Now they say, in the legal alone rule effects, obviously cast up 11 war powers questions, gender controversy, statutes, procedures, test politics, impact negotiations, compromise, looted force, and effective legislation, propaganda, demanded, receive new, confidence, growing, acceptance of the restrictions. Now they say status quo is the link. No, this, our arguments, these are Obama, about Obama, the drone strikes they're talking about our Obama-led drone decrease is not a restriction imposed by an external body, which is what our politics links up about. They say not intrinsic. Yes, it is the link proves it because he has to spend political capital, proves there's an opportunity cost. We should evaluate the politics as an intrinsic cost because it's key to political education, which is good because we learn about current events, also key to decision making and evaluating opportunity costs. Now they say we recenter again. This is about cost benefit analysis. We're not saying you should only consider the impacts of the U.S. All the impact analysis I just proves that the politics also considers the periphery. Moreover, you're weighing this against the case, not weighing it in isolation, which means we don't link to this argument. You still should consider the U.S. in addition to the periphery. Now they say no political capital. Sorry, couple problems with this card. First, it's just the congressional immunity. That's not our link to be. Our link is specific to decline in authority, not losses on things like random things he's pushing, which is a different question. It says that when the president is viewed as weak, that's what causes the defection. Also, magnitude of the link. This is a huge link. They literally have the president be restricted to a foreign body, which is unprecedented. That means which is unprecedented means that this would uniquely cause the president to be viewed as someone that Congress shouldn't follow. Now they say PC doesn't. Actually, yeah, that's fine. They say PC failed, but history proves that capital effective backroom negotiations can produce agreements. Mandel 12 client rights backroom gardens do not inspire disagreement. There's no way the negotiations within conduct of frameworks of social security could have been possible with prime ministers, the president, that is political capital Congress of institutions, so there are effective ways to use that capital, and it's irrelevant since the plan PC is affected. Drum told us it doesn't grapple the strong targets of the other side presidential offenses. You see the Bush going to correct tax in lots to spend. Republican president to have the ability to rally the troops and Madison ability to just speak before also 40 years and Bush forged a pricing consensus the threat of terrorism justifies nearly any defense. Plus the uniqueness proves that the political capital is working now. It's not a traditional political capital arguments about standing in line with other members, with like the Democrats and holding them back, which the plan causes defection, which is distinct from what their evidence is talking about. The same thing goes for all their winners win arguments. Look, we did not win a winner. There's no wins on the plan. It's a losers lose link, which means fundamentally this doesn't even make sense. Now they make a couple ads and looks at the bottom like uniqueness overwhelms the link. What, you don't have a card on this? Our card clearly doesn't say that. It also begs the question of political capital is key, which our evidence is Exelon says that Obama needs to hold people back. Last they say compartmentalization. Our Lewis card begs to differ and says yes, there is indeed spillover. And here's more evidence. Voting switching happens even on unrelated legislation signs. 10 conspiracies Republicans during the limbo section justice. Several Republicans had voted to ratify started other search that quoted these same Republican anger over unrelated legislation cost 5 to 10 votes. Go back to the thumper argument. Issue specific uniqueness proves that issue specific uniqueness comes first, and the fact that they will pass now disproves any thumper arguments. That's fine.
I'm ready. He's emailing you the document.
I believe so.
Because I am frozen over here.
Yeah, I've been cold.
We spent enough time in this hotel to go. Find some flowing clothes.
Were you upstairs?
We're over in the corner.
You said it was cemetery.
I think it's still being sent.
Huh?
Oh.
Yeah, he's sending it. While that's happening, the order is going to be the counter plan. The periphery. The jirga. The circumvention / result DA. Politics. Topicality targeted killing. And then restrictions.
I need it from the beginning.
Yeah.
I need it from the top.
Okay. It's going to be the counterclaim,
Okay.
the periphery, the jirga, circumvention DA / resolve,
Okay.
politics,
Okay.
the targeted killing topicality violation,
Okay.
and then topicality restrictions.
Fantastic. Thank you.
These are the case, and then the next stuff is politics.
Okay. Is that the order that I have it in? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Do you all have a portable podium that I can use?
Yes. There you go.
Oh, so tall, so tall. I'm going to use that one too. I just want to put the computer on a separate one. Actually, ready? It's uncomfortable that you dropped the Pixar voting issue when we not only had a theoretical impact to this, but our rear evidence indicates that the focus on bureaucratic machinations is exactly what allows the trade-off, which links to our recent hearing and experts who said there should be no new answers to this argument. Pixar voting issue made it impossible to give the 2AC. They said both that drones were bad and that they were good and that we should solve them, which makes it impossible to give the 2AC from stable offense. No new answers to Southway's topicality because our rear evidence indicates this is exactly creates a framing of the topic in the first place, which means a legal mechanism. Conditionality. Look, we said conditional ethics, not conditionality. Yes, you get as many arguments as you want and all arguments are conditional. I will concede that, but you should not be allowed to take the moral position that drones are acceptable and unacceptable in the same speech. That is what makes you bad advocates and turns you into little Eichmanns that do not actually connect it to your arguments, which is the whole thesis of the 1AC, which means the entire 1AC was an impact turn to this. You have dropped 2 theory arguments that have external impacts. Good luck in the 2NR, the periphery page. It is awkward that you have still not gone to this to acknowledge the stories of Nabil and Zabir in the 1AC are Mara and Gregory. Evidence indicates that this is not an accident that they don't go to this page and talk about these people. They are no worse than the Congress people that did not show up. They are actually worse than them because they were in the room and had a chance to acknowledge these stories. The 2NR is too late to it. This is the process of papering over stories and recentering, which proves that they are performatively done this over and over again, which comes before topicality. The jerk at the top, utilitarianism. We have impact turned this argument for who it allows genocide in Waziristan and the status quo. They do not have a single card about Muslims. Util is inevitable, but it is a question of whether or not it's utilitarianism for the center or for the other ones. All of our ethical considerations above should come before it because the blinders that they paste on it, their extinction impacts are absurd. There is no way that voting for the negative stops extinction. There's no connection between your ballot and these things, which means ethics is the only thing that leaves the room. It is the most proximate impact, which should be the relevant for consideration. The Islamophobia, their evidence is so bad that when you read it after the round, he will laugh at it. It is an indict of a specific report that is not the one EC. Islamophobia explains violence against Muslims. That was our argument. The shift has said they conceded a non-unique to this argument, which says that there are PTOS now, which means Pakistan won't shift. This is Ahmed March 26th, and the Pakistani government held direct talks to Taliban Wednesday to start the negotiations. Packet peace still in search and lots of people in receivers. Negotiations coming since the time of Pakistan, and only the plan solves the success of these. Jurgis News International 14 demanded the role of Jurgis would make the whole process more effective and predictable. They're not satisfied with the dialogue with the Jurgis influence on the tribal belt and implementation talks and process more effective. Besides the signing, the role is a must. Mark that card there. I guess the next argument is the Islamophobic excludes women argument. There's no impact to this argument in our Mara evidence impact turned into. This is another example of white men and white women trying to tell brown men and brown women how to treat their people. There's also, they have no evidence about the specific Jirga ruling that we implement. Yes, some Jirgas make bad decisions, but not the grand Jirga that we affirm. And there, the circumvention just said at the top, you do not have card 1 that says that he would not listen to Jirgas. We read a card that indicates that he stopped drone strikes for 3 months because Pakistan asked him to. That is empirical solvency. No answer to this, which answers all of the other arguments to resolve this and is stupid. There are lots of other restrictions on his power in the first place. There's no way that would spill over. The AP evidence is more specific. Also, the Ahmed evidence from the 1AC says that it is the process about the process. Also, none of these arguments turn the case. We still change the way we debate about drones. You have no offense to that. The politics is that it doesn't turn the case. The Extinction Act is obviously stupid. There's no connection between Ukraine and extinction. These arguments are absurd and prove why utilitarianism is bad. The Lincoln Road does not roll back the counterplay. Remember that awkward moment where they read a winner's win card and a shielding card that said when the president does things, even if Congress gets mad, it doesn't matter. He looks strong. We conceded that argument, which means that there's no turns the case argument. Intrinsic, a logical policymaker could obviously not sanction Ukraine and vote for the affirmative. There's no reason why these things are centered to each other. They are about the Washington. The reason why we should keep drone striking and murdering people in Waziristan is because maybe something will go wrong in Washington. Definition of our experts in recentering dissent. They have also conceded that there's no such thing as political capital. It is outdated. All of their evidence is not assume the Tea Party, which is the reason why none of this makes sense in the context of political capital. Now you need this overwhelms the link. You were not very good on this. Ukraine aid means it's inevitable. This is NYT 327 House and Senate vote overwhelming to approve $1 billion aid package, but Congress is unanimous on the modest package they did take from Russia bill, which are nearly identical, passed by 399,092. The Obama study will sign the legislation, which is then that's good enough. The targeted killing argument. This is he did not read a card on signature strikes. He has also conceded that their original calling it a targeted killing versus legal assassination is bad, which means we have another criticism of topicality that you have dropped restrictions. They're going for this because everything else is real screwed. The plan is instrumentally defined as the United States federal government should accept the advice of the grand jury, which means whatever you think that means, whatever definition they win, that is what the plan does. This has been an argument the entire debate, which means if they win a topicality argument, that is just what the plan does. They did read a counterinterpretation, and here is another one of authority. This is Oxford in 2012, the war power of the 21st century. 2001 has been argued the President, Supreme State war-making ability, Commander-in-Chief, the authority to teams whatever necessary in terms of appropriation. Should also, his card about Afghanistan, the cross-section was embarrassing on this. In Pakistan, a Qawwali Jirga is a legislative body, which means that we are a restriction. There's no its definition. He also conceded in cross-sex the only topicality violation you can go forth is you can't restrict the President himself. We don't do that. We have the federal government affirm the opposition. We will give you the link to your circumvention to say we have better evidence on it. We are not saying that we fiat the president. We are not saying we fiat the president, so good luck winning that in the next. They say that we just put Jirgas into the West. There's no impact to this argument. So when this explosion is empirically denied, there are tons of people that don't talk about that topic at all. This was Tanweer's attempt to be nice to the right wing and talk about his own identity and do this. We are obviously a better middle ground. It's also empirically denied. If you really think that your ballots are going to deter people from Rutgers and Towson to make them talk about the topic, that is absurd, which means that we are the best middle ground. The counterinterpretation, you can include prohibition, solves the majority of their offense. His limits explosion arguments are irrelevant. There is no it's in the resolution. All of your racist white definitions of what statutory restrictions mean in the context of the U.S. do not apply. You wanted a better topic. You should have written it. They did not include the word in that. Now all of our criticism reasonability is inevitable, which means that you should decide that the affirmative is reasonably topical. We ban drone strikes. That is a compromise, which is good enough. The decentering dissent on Gregory, the topical version of the app, is the link to that. Here is how Tanweer could be a good Muslim by doing it the way that we, the white people, want. That is the policing and rulemaking argument that is the internal link to this argument. The final argument I will go for is the education and bad Muslims argument. We have impact on that. Also, ableist language. You said you were sorry in cross-ex. Read a freaking card that apology is sufficient. I am offended. It is rude for you to say I mishandled something.
5, 10. Restraint counterplan. T. Statutory judicial. T. Targeted killing. The politics DA. Circumvention DA. And case.
I'll need that again.
Yeah. Restraint counterplan.
Okay.
T. Statutory judicial.
Okay.
T. Assassination.
Okay.
Politics. Circumvention. And case. Ready? We impact turn the pixel argument with bureaucracy. Talking about bureaucracy is good. It's important because things like the reason why the app is happening, and the reason why the app happens is because of problems in the U.S. They also talk about the U.S. So that impact isn't that impact is because they say the U.S. should impose restrictions from the other country. We impact turn to the two expertism cards. Say the alternative is just naivete and cause people like Sarah Palin to take over. Sometimes experts aren't inevitable. We have to be able to use, and it isn't a voting issue because there's no argument in spillover, no proven, no reason why should get the team conditionality. All of our arguments are why conditional ethics are good. We have to have different ethics. We want to experiment with different positions, get different new intellectual terrain, allows us to analyze positions from multiple angles. And what I see is not an impact turn to it. None of it takes into account that you can see the reasonability is the argument of topicality. What we did here isn't bad. Don't know what we could have done on what they consider all arguments are conditional. Multiple T carries the same type of skew. Those also would have conditional ethics. As we can say one thing, one vision shows the topic versus one other vision of the topic is not unique. Our offense is breadth is debates occurs debate over mechanism over impact here. That's all the impact. All the stuff we did above. Also key to fairness because make flex. Although the multiple tests are key, or one test is key because the app has structural advantages. Fairness is a prerequisite to their impacts. We can't be able to test their app before we can gain anything from before we can gain anything from the education. T statutory judicial not going to go for no reason to reject the team. We're not going for that. Means that we can agree with their interpretation. So that doesn't get rid of the plan is a bad and the effects are bad. You should be able to consider it. All of the calculation evidence says that they have an unethical stance if they say we should do the app, and it also has even though it has bad consequences. They also refer to the president as he in terms of the office, and it's just a direct form of sexism and linguistic violence, just as bad as any of just as bad as all the ableism stuff. Now, also apologies of turning the ballot, using the ballot, it causes backlash, which is word assassination. We don't call it targeted killing anymore, and we're not calling it targeted killing. They also said the word targeted killing, so it doesn't matter. Politics. Impact outweighs the sanctions. Hard sanctions on Russia cause massive retaliation, causes huge protectionism. Our impact cards are very long and well warranted. Saying annexation is silly begs the question. There's mostly no argument in the 2AC. And if you think our evidence is plausible, then there should be enough. At least the impact is mass death and suffering because economic clash, which affects the entire world. So that outweighs on both magnitude and time because it happens faster. Now the link is insufficient. There's no wins involved. The plan is a loss. It is a loss from Obama to have a foreign body to declare to limit the person's authority. That means it's insufficient. The winners win. The link is insufficient. Even the other cards about international perception, not about the perception of stuff, about perception of stuff itself inside the United States. Intrinsicsness is bad. It's key to valid opportunity cost. That's the real world. The cost of Obama enacting things like healthcare was that it really pissed off Republicans and forced them to drop things like climate legislation and normalizing relations with the real world is important because it pairs with life outside debate. Also key to advocacy skills, which link towards their conditionality arguments. We want to get whoever wanted to actually get the U.S. to see the trigger the restrictions. We have to understand how the different prioritization happens. They should be able to get key decision-making skills. That's the most about the consequences of education. It turns their logic arguments. It's impossible to be logical without making decisions. Now they say we justify murder because politics is bad. That's false. If we win, if it's false, we say it is bad for everyone. All the shift is proved all their app is also bad for people in periphery. Economic violence affects everyone. Talk about domestic stuff is important. They link to this just as much because they have said that the U.S. should have domestic constraints as well. They say the U.S. should accede to the jurors' demand. This is exactly the same as what the app does. The reason why the impact is important is explained above. The examples like the WPR failed and caused things like all the drone pilots right now because they didn't do things like take into account non-human weapons like drones and other stuff. Political capital theory is true. Our scenarios about political capital, but not the way the cards assume Obama isn't arm twisting to get legislation passed. He's trying to look strong so that people don't go against him. The plan reverses that perception, making him look like he's powerless. That's Lewis. The only warrant of the 1 year is the Tea Party. That's not our internal link. Obama needs to keep moderates from defecting and joining the Hawks and push for sanctions there. Also wrong because empirical dynamic families with the people account for that's Mandel and Drama empirically happen on start. That's another card. That's another card ready. Uniqueness doesn't overwhelm politics rails about Ukraine. It's not Ukraine aid. It says that PC's key to hold back tougher sanctions on Russia. They conceded that political sanctions value so it can't overwhelm the link. And because they've conceded the link, it is massive. It can't overwhelm any of the Uniqueness arguments that aid is happening right now. Obama can have credible off ramps for Putin to avoid escalating sanctions. The plan takes away his ability to do that circumvention. Give the Avs zero risk. They've got no card that says that if Obama would accede to a restriction by an external body saying he doesn't get rid of drone strikes. Our bird evidence says that things like the negotiations are all hype by Obama. He always lies and says he's going to get rid of drones, but never actually does it because he's a warmonger. They conceded that the Article 2 power, the pressure of wartime means Obama's going to have to circumvent because he thinks he'll lead to win actions. He's got the means to the covert action statute and the Article 2 power, and he also has the motive of they've got no cards. They conceded on case our Yurga evidence that said even Pakistanis don't follow the Yurga. Obviously, Obama is not going to do that. Let's all prove their ethics are bad because it's ineffective and it's ineffective and means they don't do anything. So you can vote on presumption. The case of the frame for the debate is calculation and utilitarianism. Personal connections to the topic are good, but if the result of that it turns into something bad, that should be rejected. Activism is inevitable. The ethics is tautological. So how do you prove a value to the ethic without reverting to some form of consequentialism? We say that all people are equal. Economic consequences turns everyone on the shift. This has proof. They heard after. Then they say extinction to serve. They need a warrant for that. There's no reason why proximate connections are good. Proximate connections also can happen under our interpretation. You have proximate connections used to justify a topical plan. Let's all the brands are cards and teeth. They say Islamophobia is bad. I can't explain how all violence against Muslims is also causes the shift is sad. Yes, their court says there's a temporary stop, and there's a temporary stop for negotiations. That does not say it's going to happen forever. And they've conceded that if we win any of the circumvention or any of the motive arguments, that means they're going to use cruise missiles and ground assaults, which are net worse in terms of their ethics, because they are worse. They are worse for worse for Muslims. So the plans, Jurga is not going to be a force that's all above. Evilism, like, I'm sorry, they also do just as many bad things.
When did we say he? Seriously, I want to know. When did I say he?
In the 1 in R on politics and circumvention,
we didn't give a 1 in R.
1 AR on politics and circumvention.
You said women, there's no impact to the women, you said women don't matter. Like,
you also said that.
I said you didn't read a card about.
And if you want to look
that's
at
also
the
not
camera.
something that the 2 in R said, but I would like to look at the camera because I'm pretty sure that I said she every time.
Okay.
I mean, we're using prep for our 2AR, so obviously don't want to do it right now, but that's a pretty serious accusation.
Okay, if you want to look at the camera, you can look at the...
I would like to prep for the 2AR.
Hold on.
I think so.
I knew always were.
That's really awkward, and we should definitely be grandstanding about that. So I think that I honestly, I think that we should. Or I'll write that out. So here's what I think we should focus on the. So on circumvention, they dropped a link term. It says that peace talks are happening now, and the U.S. affirming Jurgas means that they will succeed. Like, well, who cares if Obama circumvents if the peace talks are successful and solve stability in Pakistan? Like, he dropped a link term. I read 2 cards, one that the talks are happening now, and 2 that the plan was key to make them successful. Boy, is that awkward. Circumvention does not indicate this at all, because it's just about perception. Also, we have cards that say that Obama, the reason why he did
be the case page. Or just my bad.
You can get us organized.
Yeah. So case page, the T flow about the usage of the word he, English language, that argument, the circumvention dissent, and then the politics dissent. Yeah. Case, the he sexism argument, circumvention, politics.
Someone just texted they were watching.
Okay, so the order is case, the sexism argument on whichever flow you floated on, circumvention, and then politics. Can you get the timer? Thanks. Ready? Cool.
The 1AC, 2AC, and the 1AR all began with an acknowledgement of the voices of the periphery. The negative has refused to acknowledge the story of Raymond Nabila Zubair. This performative erasure is an independent reason to vote affirmative. Very clear in the 1AR. There is 0 2NR answer to this. There are worse than the policymakers because they are in the room. They heard the story, yet they still did not put any input. They instead said, oh, we should focus on this politics bill that's happening in the other room instead of listening to your stories. Now, there are 3 impacts to this. First is the recentering this error. The Gargary evidence indicates that when you performatively erase the voices of the periphery, you continually allow the genocide them to occur. This is always the issue with American politics and Western politics. They always forget about the East. They always forget about Pakistan and Islam. This will justify genocide to occur. They say we also talk about Washington. We flip the gate from Washington. What's your argument isn't that the usage of the word Washington is bad, but the fact that we prioritize the Ziristan over Washington is internally to our argument. They say second is ever Islamophobia argument. Ever mirror evidence indicates that this allows Islamophobia to occur. We demonize them as allows them to occur. Forget about them. As ever mirror evidence says, if you don't solve Islamophobia, no fucking shit. There's no way to solve racism in total, but that doesn't mean you should take steps to combat racism in every instance possible. The third is their genocide argument that was sort of explained above. Gregory evidence indicates also there's 0 case defense on this. They have conceded that genocide is bad, that genocide is occurring now, and their politics is that none of them do anything about this. Go to the sexism argument. First is the no link argument. Eric explicitly uses the word she instead of he, the pronoun she instead of he, to refer to the president. Also, this scapegoating of sexism is whatever mirror evidence indicates. Always leads to Islamophobia. They always say, oh, you did something bad too, that's why we should be allowed to continue to have our drones like that. Or, oh, you did something bad, that's why we should continually be ableist towards you. That's our independent reason that was explained above from our mirror evidence. This is a conceded argument. Government, no answer to it in the 2NR. Go to the circumvention. This is there. Conceded a late turn argument. For instance, that peace talks are happening now. Our evidence indicates it's just from 2 days ago. Indicates that there will be 0 conventional shift for Pakistan because peace talks have already started. The only answer to this is the temporary peace talks. Well, is the second piece of evidence indicates that the plan allows these peace talks to be successful. That means there won't just be a temporary peace talk and then resort back to violence. But the fact that when you affirm the plan indicates that when you allow Jurgas to allow it to be included in the peace talk, that means the peace talk will actually be able to be successful because they will be included, inclusive of every zone from Waziristan. Now, this is very awkward because they also conceded that Obama does not circumvent foreign restrictions. All of their evidence is in the context of the domestic restrictions, congressional restrictions that were AP evidence indicates that Obama had a 3-month ban on drone strikes in Pakistan, asked him to stop these drone strikes. That is exactly what the affirmative does. That means we are the only piece of evidence which indicates that Obama listens to foreign restrictions. They have zero evidence that he wouldn't listen to them whatsoever.
Also, 1 second too. They didn't go for framework.
Right.
They have all of the top part of what he said on case as a reason to vote for us, even
Right.
if they win all these DAs.
Even if they win all the DAs, they didn't go for framework. All the ethical reasons that were explained above are a reason to vote affirmative. Also, evidence indicates that the U.S. is key to bridge the gap between the United States and Waziristan. None of it. That means that this allows Obama and the American body politic to listen to foreign institutions. There has zero evidence on this. There are only 2 arguments on the circumvention argument. Are about yes. First is the yes circumvention, but this card is specific to congressional restrictions. Second is the Article 2 argument, but this only happens. It only indicates that circumvention occurs in wartime. Their concession of our link turn to the shift decide means that there is no wartime. That stability will be created in Pakistan. That means Obama has no reason to circumvent. That means there's no presumption argument. Only the affirmative resolves in some sort of beneficial argument. I go to the politics. This said they dropped the ball on this argument because they conceded a card that Eric read in the one era that the bill already passed. Our New York Times evidence indicates that Ukraine aid bill is the same exact thing as Russia. Russia sanctions. The card explicitly states Congress is near unanimity on modest package of aid and sanctions on Russia. It also goes on to say the plan that Obama's going to sign includes new sanctions against Russians and Ukrainians who are already supporting Russia. Which there have zero dissad now because the plan, the bill that they were trying to argue for is already passed in Congress. This means there's no offense on this.
The 2NR does not answer this argument. The bills are identical.
The 2NR
and they
just
both
does
pass.
not answer this argument. His only response is, it's about the aid bill. He concedes the warrant that the aid bill is a sanctions bill. They wouldn't have 2 separate bills to deal with this issue.
Unanimous support.
Right,
And they're
it's
treated
unanimous support. Also, our evidence is
uniqueness
from
overwhelms,
yesterday.
like, even if you think
Uniqueness
they're
overwhelms the link. That means zero answer to this, zero offense. Even if you grant them this they concede to ever intrinsicness argument, they concede they don't have a good response to the intrinsic argument that policymakers in the Congress are able to do both. They are able to recognize the periphery. They are able to attend Nabila Zubair's testimony and still pass other bills. The fact that they didn't do this just proves the link. This proves the argument that the performative erasure argument that we are extending. Not only that, political capital is a debt theory. Our evidence is the most recent scholarship on this to indicate that things like the Tea Party and the wide divisions in Congress are the reasons political capitals don't matter anymore. This is also conceded by their argument, which indicates that their own evidence, their own argument in the 2NR, which indicates that there are divisions in Congress. That's why the current divisions in Congress are the reasons you're making this. And also there is zero framing issue.
Well, no. The distinction they made about it has to look strong. He stopped drone strikes for 3 months.
The distinction that he made about he has to look strong is
How does he
also
look strong
not
now?
unique by our argument on the shift that said, or on the circumvention that said that he's already stopped drone strikes from 3 months. That means this the strongness issue would no longer matter. Also, they read a winner's win card for as they keep on the counterplan, which indicates that even in the face of disapproval from Congress, Obama has to take bold positions that allows him to be a winner, end up being a winner. Also, there's zero impact to this. What is the impact to the Ukraine bill?
There's no such thing as fiat.
No such
Voting
thing as
neg does
fiat.
not
Voting
stop
neg does not
extinction.
solve extinction. They didn't even extend their extinction card. What is the warrant? How does the passing the bill solve extinction? None of this was in the 2NR.
Debate.
You're on the thread, right? So I can just reply on it.
This random 1AR T-burn is not going to be relevant, right? Yeah, no. Your code is CE, right? Mm-hmm.
teaches.
Yeah. It says in the email that I owe $100 deposit for the call, but
Politics and circumvention.